everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KINGCOMICS.CA. Today, guys, once again, it is Greg Capullo Day. We're taking a look at his early 90s X-Force run, more specifically issue 22, cover dated May 1993. Still a few issues left before he moves on and fucks off to Image Comics and starts working for Todd McFarlane. And doing some really awesome stuff eventually on Spawn, but we're still here with X-Force, and you know, this is all hindsight for me because at the time, once Rob was off X-Force and I was collecting Image Comics, I was not buying these, but it's really fun to go back and buy those certain 90s issues that I wasn't looking at back then, but that kind of give me that little bit of 90s fix that I'm missing these days that we're not getting much in modern comics. So looking at this Greg Capullo stuff definitely is fun. The Liam Sharp stuff that I've been looking at, anything from this period now with kind of the artists right after the Image guys moved on from Marvel and formed that company. So not much to say here, just kind of a group shot of the guys with some very 90s style guns. Again, I've talked about Greg Capullo doing great tech, does an awesome job here of taking Rob Liefeld's kind of super sci-fi out there gun designs and making them more realistic in the sense of that they look functional, right? One of the things I've often mentioned when I talk about Rob Liefeld, you know, if you really pay attention to his art, and especially Cable and any characters post Cable that have guns, they're always holding the guns at weird angles or in weird positions. And if you really, you know, you look at it quickly, it doesn't really register. But if you pay attention, you're like, that doesn't make sense at all. Greg Capullo is kind of correcting that here because underneath all the kind of 90s aesthetic, he's a solid draftsmanship, knows how things work and how things should look, and you know, to at least be believable and practical. So, you know, these guns again have that kind of futuristic look and sci-fi inspiration, almost manga to a certain extent, and that makes sense in around 1993. That manga influence is starting to creep into a lot of stuff. It just look really cool and functional, and that's what I like about the cover here. Greg Capullo, just a more solid basic artist than Rob Liefeld, even at this point, I'm sure if you asked me as a kid, even though I know now rationally he's the better artist, I still probably preferred Rob Liefeld's stuff. It was just kicking off the page a bit more and just more electric, I guess, is how I describe it. But solid cover, and I really do appreciate it now for sure. So last issue, Gray Malkin, Cable's Satellite, Nick Fury, GW Bridge, War Machine were squaring off against some of the members of X-Force, Cannonball, Feral, is Shatterstar there? I think he is. Anyway, something like that. And at the end of that issue, Gray Malkin explodes. And now we got the ramifications here. You know, just to describe real quickly what's going on there. And open that sucker up. I also realized going through this and seeing some posts on Facebook today earlier before I did the reviews, there was something about, and I've talked about this before, how Greg Capullo, Andy Kubert, and Adam Kubert have a kind of a similar style. Even John Romita Jr., and at the time, I couldn't see it, and I didn't see it, but I find then, you know, that this period, it makes sense where, you know, when Jim Lee was on, there was Jim Lee, there was Mark Silvestri, there was on Wolverine, so Jim Lee on X-Men, and Will Spertasio on Uncanny X-Men. There's certain kind of similitude between all their styles. They gelled together. They had similar styles. They had similar hatching in that aesthetic, right? And we see that when those guys go to Image even more so, it only becomes kind of more apparent, right? Wildcats, Jim Lee, Wetworks, Will Spertasio, and what was it? Mark Silvestri, Cyberforce, right? Very similar art styles. The West Coast homage look, right? Now, the guys who come after are on these Marvel books. Once the Image guys leave, are definitely trying to mimic that hatching style, that Rob Liefeld hatching style to a certain extent, because I do differentiate between the Extreme Studios hatching and the Homage Studios hatching, even though they're both West Coast. There is a slight difference. But yeah, they're trying to emulate both of those styles, basically, I think, are the next batch of guys. So Andy Kubert, Greg Capullo, Adam Kubert, John Romita Jr., maybe not so much, but compositionally, those four artists I find have similar styles and things that work together aesthetically as well. So it kind of makes sense now looking back that, you know, they would choose those artists to be on those books because there's, again, it's not quite Jim Lee, it's not quite Rob Liefeld, but there's a consistency there in the aesthetic between, once again, Greg Capullo, the Kubert Bros, and to a lesser extent, John Romita Jr. aesthetically, but at least compositionally, those guys all have a lot of things in common. probably spent way too much explaining that once again, but it's this concept I've talked about before and that I kind of come back to every once in a while and get on my high horse about. Thankfully, though, X-Force, after the explosion and breaking apart of Grey Malkin, they have a teleporter on their team. So obviously she quickly teleported X-Force and even the guys that were fighting against off of Grey Malkin and into one of the shield ships that were orbiting around it. Fabian Naichisi is the writer, Greg Capullo is the penciler, Conrad and Candelario are the inkers. So Candelario being the regular guy and Conrad kind of jumping on here. I can't really, as I go through the book, see much of a difference between the two. So if anyone kind of notices it, I mean, I feel like this page maybe is just slightly rougher and not quite as polished. So maybe that's Conrad, but I don't know. They have similar inking styles. Everyone's inking in that style. And Conrad is even going to become an inker at Image. If I'm not mistaken, he was inking over, or is it the same Kevin Conrad who worked at Image? Anyway, I don't know for sure. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass. Just an extreme foreshortened shot here. When, you know, sometimes when I see something so extreme, it almost feels a little bit like on purpose funny and a little bit tongue in cheek. So maybe Greg Capullo's having fun here. I mean, you should be having fun if you're drawing comics, right? But as soon as they have teleported in, Leela Cheney leaves them there. Is that her name? Leela Cheney? And teleports the X-Force members out. So the other two members of X-Force left, Sunspot and Cannonball, were able to expedite themselves out of Grey Malkin in time with a safety unit here. Kind of cramped quarters here. Nice touch here, I think, with the monochrome dark kind of colors. Almost gives it a 2001 vibe here. When both of the characters are talking about Hal in that movie, they go in the pod to talk about him, kind of reminiscent of that. I like the depiction of the silhouettes, but the light up elements all throughout here in the foreground. Capullo just always a master of layering and very smart to have tilted that angle. You're in space, so who knows exactly what's up and what's down, right? Really good stuff just in the subtle kind of layouts of the panels here. Even this shot of him flicking some switches, I think is just really well done. So re-entering Earth's atmosphere here, he's used that thing from last issue where he's got a broken border, but that's kind of built with pixels and squares and stuff almost. So it's kind of a controlled broken border, which is kind of funny to say, but and this little bit of design down here, I really like. What an interesting panel where you just get a silhouette here of the element that's flying, and then the way these clouds just get the top kind of light reflection on it, kind of almost, oh man, when I reviewed Keith Giffen early 80s stuff, it almost gives it a 70s vibe. He was doing something similar in there. It's a lot clearer here, though, with a better coloring than from 1981. In that Giffen book was Legion of Superheroes. I got those reviews. Check them out in the archive. Yeah, I remember this early 90s stuff when the members of the X-Men or X-Force or whatever would always kind of be trapped in some kind of weird technological bondage gear. It was kind of a fad then. It started maybe with Jim Lee. Rob Liefeld was doing it too. Just made up technology to make it easier to draw someone being kind of imprisoned. That's kind of how I always took it when you look at that stuff. There's funnier ones where they're naked and like the unit restraining them. There's arms, legs, and also crotch area for some reason, because you could use your crotch to escape from it. Obviously, we know why. Yeah, torturing them in the waves is the character that we met last issue, who has either is an external or has some sort of link with them. If you remember that kind of external storyline, that's why we see him. That's why these guys are locked up, and that's why we get this cool shot of Gideon here, Dutch tilt, boom. And again, something where compositionally, this is the same Greg Capullo on Spawn, on Batman, on all the other cool stuff that you love to see his art on. And just a cool shot of a pretty boring character, to be honest. He was kind of, Gideon's the kind of character to me where it's almost like, Rob Liefeld designed him, and he looks cool when Rob Liefeld draws him, but any other artist, even Greg Capullo is really skilled. He just never looks as cool and doesn't look an iota cool here. I don't like him here when he's drawn by anyone else but Rob Liefeld. And not that I think he's the coolest looking character, but there's just something about the Liefeld magic that he's got that makes it look cool. More teleporting from Leela Cheney. That's kind of annoying. There's some body language stuff that I like. Farrell here, her hair's kind of mussed up. I don't know what's going on there. It almost looks like she's lost some of it or something. Someone's brushed her hair out. her fur's a bit frazzled here. It's subtle, but like, you know, it's like a cat who hasn't had time to wash herself in a while. And she's probably, you know, cats tend to be annoyed by that. He's still doing the cat-like feet too, which I like. That Rob Liefeld wasn't. I mentioned that when past reviews here. Yeah, so she's all kind of beaten up and lost some fur and stuff. Once again, he's got her washing herself, which is just a nice little personality touch. This is, I'll just give, again, Capullo is a great artist. I've talked about down shots. This is like one of the most extreme down shots where you kind of got enough of a view of Richter here, but we're basically right up top above, or pretty much Shatter starting a little chinny here. And I just always find this really kind of hard to draw, just hard to get right? I can kind of do it, but I got to work at it and kind of erase and redraw and stuff and to get the angles right. And Capullo does a good job right there. Get a nice anchor image on this page. You know, a little bit of action because really haven't had that much in this issue. And I just think that's a cool one. They're not even touching the ground. They're going so fast. Same idea as when you draw a car, right? So that it looks like it's going really fast. Just works really well. Really cool. Yeah, there's just something about, you know, I guess I kind of noticed now, I had this flash as I go through these pages here. These two specifically, there's something a little bit just not quite as organic, I guess, in the layout, or it's a little too kind of clinical, I guess, the art is. And I prefer when Greg Capullo gets a bit rougher. Like you get little shots of it here when he deals with Farrell, you know, the kind of stuff we'll see more of on Spawn and when he throws a shadow on a face. But there's just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's a little clean for my tastes, right? And just a little too open. Although I think the compositionally it's great. The aesthetic still kind of annoys me. I think overall, I'm looking at it now, it's, you know, you can still see someone interpreting someone else's kind of technique into their own style, and it just doesn't kind of ring true with what I now know about Greg Capullo. So even as a kid, I guess I felt that there's a slight inauthenticity to it because, you know, they are being asked to kind of ape the guys who came before, and it just kind of annoys me. So that's why when I see stuff like this that's completely opposite of what a Rob Liefeld does, it really jumps out at me and I really like it. Like the bits of technology and stuff really excels at that. And everything else, really, layout, composition, backgrounds, like Greg Capullo is much more adept at that stuff than Rob Liefeld. So we get a quick sequence here with, what is her name again? From Mrs. Cooper. Well, I forget her first name anyways. Leader of X Factor, or government liaison to X Factor in this time and continuity of X-Men comics. See, when I see something like this with the Grizzly character, I see a certain similarity to how John Romita Jr. also represented this character in the Cable miniseries, right? So some of the compositional elements, right? The kind of squarey muscles and shoulders and stuff that Capullo's doing here just kind of fits in with what John Romita typically does. And he's really gotten good at drawing the women's. Domino looks really great here. And this is a nice touch too, the overlapping leg here and the one going behind the panel. Just little tricks to create that layering, that depth, which he is so adept at doing. Yeah, something, even this panel here, there's something about the simplicity of the layout and the tech and the hands. To me, this just says John Romita Jr. We get introduced to Weapon Prime, so I guess we're going to see more of them in future issues, possibly next issue of X-Force. Very 90s kind of super team, some forgettable members. These two twins here and this guy here, I mean, not super impressed with their design. This guy kind of feels almost like a more retro design with some 90s elements added on with the you know, it's his costume, but these could almost be like tribal tattoos, so not very cool. I do like this guy in the background. Almost looks like a minotaur, right? Like a bull man. He's got the Minotaur from Hulk a little bit, and he's got the ring in his nose and a little bit of tech here just to make him a little bit different. I think he looks pretty cool. And this guy here, there's something I like about this design here where it's almost like there's a little bit of a Hellraiser thing kind of being mixed into the look here. Some kind of bondage gear, just very creepy. Don't know exactly who he is. Hope we get more of him next issue. But yeah, this is the character that interests me the most here. Don't know his name. These two guys. So the twins we've been following around for the past couple of issues, right? On one or two pages, get confronted by Deadpool. I like to use a screen tone here to pull him into the background a bit. Works really well. Again, Capullo does a great job, but I just don't like how he interprets Deadpool's mask. But at this point, Deadpool wasn't really specifically, I mean, he was kind of fan popular to a certain extent, within the X-Men kind of community. But he definitely wasn't a huge character or star like he would become later, enough to warrant a movie, right? So I guess you were still kind of able to play around with his look a little bit, and editors wouldn't mind so much and look the other way. Here's another guy, like, have I seen this guy before? Maybe I'm mistaken, but I feel like this is, you know, a John Romita Jr. design. Again, those parallels between those two, right? Here's a look of, like, you know, I talked about how the way Capullo draws the ovals around Deadpool's eyes almost to be basically like spawns, more similar to Spawn. So this here almost feels like the kind of stuff later on we're going to see Capullo doing on Spawn, right? This panel here, take it out, color it differently, and that's basically fits right into Spawn. And more examples of cool tech when he draws the ships and stuff, right? There's just complete mastery, obviously, from multiple different angles at kind of creating and coming up with the stuff and drawing it really well. Just looks great. So I guess, seems like from the images anyways, that they're going on some sort of spacefaring mission at this point. So I guess we'll find out next issue where that leads, because that's where this issue falls off, and get a hint of Gideon again, and sending a message is this new villain guy here. Definitely he's supposed to be one of those externals, but they're using that old school kind of Asian bad guy influence kind of thing, like the Mandarin. Is that his name? Iron Man's villain, right? Or kind of the Yellow Claw and all those, you know, Golden Age villains that obviously war propaganda. They were all evil Asians, right? So definitely pulling from that kind of vibe. Gideon, again, just nothing here makes him an impressive looking character. It looks kind of weird too, where the coloring makes it look like he's got a cape, no shirt, and like cybernetic sleeves. Just kind of a weird fashion choice for sure. And pointing out to the other members of X-Force that their friends are imprisoned here, they're in danger, and obviously we'll find out more about that next issue. All right, not much more to say, guys. So that is it for my review of X-Force issue number 22. If you're still watching, guys, and you're subscribed to the channel, I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for your loyalty and support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. Speaking of comic books, I've got my own that I've made. Check out my stuff, Big Baby and STARCRASHER, at KINGCOMICS.CA. Thanks again for watching, everybody out there, and have yourselves an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.